Okay, I'll call to order the Butte-Silver Government Study Commission meeting for March 24th, 2025. Can we have roll call, please? Well, whatever, 31st. It says 24th on my meeting minutes, which I was looking at.
Raylan Brandel.
Present.
Lori Casey.
Present.
Dan Dennehy.
Here.
Mary McCormick. Here. Cindy Perdue-Dolan.
Present.
Cindy Shaw. Present. Chad Silk.
Present.
Matt Steffen. Ben Thielen.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have approval of the minutes from March 24th, 2025.
We have to do item number 4 first.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. So, do we have any public comment on any item on the agenda? Hearing none, may we have an approval of the minutes for the meeting held March 24th, 2025? Ms. Shaw.
Madam Chair, thank you. So on page 7, we talked last week about party line, and I believe it was said that Ron Davis was hoping to have members to come once a month on every Thursday of the month. And so, but then we talked about the program would be on the 16th. I believe that was the date that was thrown out, and that's actually a Wednesday. So I wasn't sure which it is, but I kind of have to, if it's Thursday, then I'm going to have to make some arrangements.
Correct.
So,
It's every third Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So there would be a correction.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you. That's what I
Correction.
needed to hear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other corrections needed?
I move that the minutes of the March 24th, 2025 meeting be set. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion for approval of minutes, it passes. All right, so we're on to the business of the evening with our conversations with departments. And it's Ms. Worm, Beth Worm for our Human Resources Department, who's up first. Thank you for coming tonight to present to us. We've been discussing that these sessions are listening sessions and that we're here to hear from you. It's not intended to be a grilling or you're not on trial. You're here to share things with us about what you think about your county government and how we can best serve our citizenry. And so we're here to listen and get ideas from you. We will have a series of questions that we run through. You were provided those. And then there's follow-up questions from the commissioners as we go around. So tonight, just to change it up, I would like to start to my right with Ms. McCormick. Can you lead us off, please? And do you have a presentation that you wanted to give?
Thank you. Yes, I do have a PowerPoint, but it's really only like 2 slides. So
We can start with that, and then we'll go to the questions. Does that work for you?
they actually go along with the questions.
Perfect.
So.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start with Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Worm. I have the first question, and it is, what are the specific responsibilities and duties of the Butte-Silver Human Resources Director?
Great. Kim, could we go to the first slide, please? Could we go to the first slide? Thank you, and thank you, Commissioners, for the question. For the record, my name is Beth Worm, the HR Director for Butte-Silver. The HR department currently has 5 employees, including myself. There's the HR Director, an HR Generalist, an HR Technician, a Safety and Risk Coordinator, and a Safety and Health Coordinator, who is also our ADA Coordinator. The HR department covers a wide range of responsibilities, but there are 3 main areas: personnel management, compensation and benefits, and safety and risk management. These core functions help us maintain everything from hiring and supporting employees to ensuring fair pay and providing benefits while maintaining a safe and compliant workforce. With personnel management, we oversee programs for handling all aspects of employee management. This includes all levels of employees' life cycle within the organization, including recruitment, interviewing, onboarding, employee development, performance management, retention, and offboarding. We manage employee relations by addressing issues, mediating disputes, processing grievances, and ensuring fair treatment of all employees. Butte-Silver Bow also has 18 different collective bargaining agreements, with the HR department playing a key role in assisting with negotiations, contract interpretation, and ensuring compliance with the terms of these agreements to maintain a positive labor relations. We also manage personnel records, performance, compliance reviews, and handle state and federal reporting requirements. The HR department works with the Personnel Committee on the Council of Commissioners to develop and implement HR policies and procedures that comply with the employment laws and foster a positive work environment. This includes administering and enforcing the Butte-Silver Bow drug and alcohol testing policies, particularly for transit and CDL positions. With compensation and benefits, the HR department establishes position classification and updates position descriptions in coordination with hiring managers. We manage employee wage and salary administration, which includes the implementation of a newly developed non-union wage structure, along with overseeing 18 collective bargaining agreements. We administer benefit programs, including life insurance, health insurance, flexible spending accounts, HSAs, accident and critical illness coverage. In addition, we provide employees with education on other benefits options like AFLAC, 457 retirement accounts, and such. We also assist with administering benefit programs for certain unions. The HR department manages sick leave programs, including FMLA, ADA, and the sick leave pools. The HR department also administers the Butte-Silver Bow self-funded health insurance plan, and I serve on as the chair of the Butte-Silver Bow Insurance Committee, which oversees that plan. The HR department also manages the Butte-Silver Bow Wellbeing Program, which fosters a culture of wellness by engaging employees and their families in initiatives that promote a healthy, balanced lifestyle. The program aims to boost productivity, reduce health claims, and improve overall quality of life. Through the Wellbeing Program, we run lifestyle rewards periods where employees and spouses can earn points for making healthy choices with the opportunity to earn rewards. We also conduct an annual biometric screening, which is offered free to all employees and spouses, even if they are not on the Butte-Silver Bow self-funded health insurance plan. These screenings help raise health awareness and can lead to early detection of issues like high cholesterol, diabetes, or cancer, which can enable early intervention. With safety and risk management, the HR department oversees employee health, safety, and risk management programs. We manage employee training and development by identifying needs and designing programs and encouraging professional growth and opportunities, all while ensuring compliance with state and federal standards and regulations. The HR department manages workers' compensation claims as well as property and liability claims and coverage. We also administer ADA Title I, which pertains to employment, and Title II, which pertains to public entities through the HR office. The Butte-Silver Bow HR department plays an important role in managing a wide array of programs and services designed to support the well-being, development, and effective management of our employees, from overseeing benefits and handling employee relations to managing risk, safety programs, and health initiatives. The HR department is dedicated to fostering a positive and productive and compliant workforce for all staff members. Wages and benefits represent a large portion of Butte-Silver Bow's overall budget, so the HR department understands that employees are one of our greatest assets, driving the long-term success and growth of the organization.
Thank you. Ms. Worm, if you'd like to give your prepared remarks to Ms. Cohn, I think that would help her greatly.
Yes.
Because she's scrambling to write all that down, so we appreciate that. That was very detailed, very excellent answer. Any follow-up questions for the first question out the gate? All right, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Beth. Boy, that was impressive. That's a lot. And you only have 5 employees. I'm pretty impressed. Okay, here's your question. What are the most critical problems presently confronting the Human Resources Department?
Thank you for the question, and I apologize, I do talk fast, and I will absolutely give her my notes. So thank you for the question. To start with, I'd like to say that I don't think many of these challenges are unique to Butte-Silver Bow, but they're issues that many HR departments are currently facing. So recruitment and retention, one of the main challenges we deal with is attracting and keeping qualified candidates, especially in today's competitive job market. With so many companies vying for skilled professionals, it's not always easy to find the right people. On top of that, keeping great employees around means creating a positive work environment, offering growth opportunities, and making sure our compensation and benefits are competitive. Employee relations, a big part of what we do is addressing employee concerns, resolving conflicts, and keeping a positive workplace culture. This can be tough at times, especially since we're a small department, so sometimes we're only able to be reactive versus proactive, particularly when it comes to shaping workplace culture. Labor relations, being a government agency, we can sometimes face political pressures that can impact our relationship with labor groups. These external factors can make it more challenging to navigate certain issues, but we work hard to maintain open communications, ensure fair treatment for all employees. Workforce well-being, supporting our employees' mental and physical health is important more now than ever, especially with the growing demand for work-life balance and workplace flexibility. With increasing stress levels, it's critical for us to explore new ways of offering support and help our employees manage their well-being both at work and outside of it. Budget constraints, effectively managing HR programs and services within our budget limitations is always a challenge. Well, I'm sure you know this is not unique to this department. It's particularly relevant for us when it comes to health insurance and benefit programs. These constraints are closely tied to our recruitment and retention efforts, as offering competitive benefits is key factor in attracting and retaining talent. And then legacy software and aging systems, updating and integrating new HR technology systems while ensuring a smooth transition and proper staff training can be a real challenge. Adopting a more modern and effective HRIS system could significantly improve our department's efficiency and accuracy. And for reference, as I'm sure everybody here knows, we still have paper timesheets, and so that one might be specific to Butte-Silver Bow.
Ms. Shaw, follow up.
Thank you. Follow up. Beth, that's another impressive list on the other side. So getting to the software, maybe some other things that are still done by hand, and paper and whatnot, which, Kim can attest that I like paper, but, that's just me. But we did talk to a couple other people last week about digitizing and being able to do that. And so have you approached our IT department? And I know it's a big deal and it's hard to do, but what's the status of that possible future change?
Yes, thank you for the question. We actually have been specifically working with the IT department to kind of revitalize our onboarding and offboarding process, and we're trying to develop workflows that hiring supervisors can actually take a more active role in assisting the HR department with those onboarding and offboarding aspects. So we have been working towards it, but again, with a small department, sometimes those things are tough.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming tonight and spending some time and giving us some information. I want to explore the labor relations. We had asked this and I had asked this of our Public Works Director. With 18 collective bargaining agreements, that must kind of hamstring what you're able to do. Could you give us an example of some of the labor relations that you deal with, and maybe an example of something that didn't work and then you plowed through it and got a resolution? I'm just curious. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the question. I can't think of a specific example, but for example, when somebody is in a collective bargaining agreement and they ask, what are my holidays? I cannot answer that question off the top of my head because with 18 different groups, they have 18 different languages. I always have to refer back to their CBA, and so sometimes it's just challenging making sure that you're speaking to that employee with their specific bargaining agreement language.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up to that. So even with 18 different agreements and even having to go back to them, do they differentiate a lot, and does it put you in a bind sometimes because they're not all the same? I was just kind of an education for myself. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sometimes they are not the same, and sometimes that does present challenges or opportunities for trying to streamline them in the future in future negotiations. That's something that we look at to try to be as consistent as we can be, but it can be a challenge.
Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Beth, we were supplied the market study for the non-union positions. Have you done a study on any of your labor or union positions, and how do those wages reflect to what the market is?
Thank you for the question. With 18 different groups, I don't know if I could make a broad answer to that. It would really depend on each specific agreement, but that is something that we take into consideration when we go into new negotiations with every group.
Other follow-up questions? Ms. Worm, from my question would be regarding the policies and procedures in terms of hiring and promoting. So, for example, what would you say is the process? Do we have an internal promotion first and then hire from externally, or what does that process look like?
Thank you for the question. It depends, which is HR's favorite answer. But it depends on if it's an internal to a bargaining agreement where they have language that specifies that it goes in-house first. It is different if it's the fire department. They have a completely different promotional process. But we do have a policy that kind of specifies that. But typically what we do is we get a requisition, we make sure we have budget authority to hire that position, and then we take a look at whether that position is going to be posted internally or externally first.
So in terms of recruiting, you mentioned that it's often hard to find people that are the best candidates with the right credentials. Do you find that the internal process limits that credentialing, or would you say it's a strength or weakness, I guess, in your opinion?
Thank you. I don't find it to be a strength or a weakness. I think it's just part of the process.
Excellent, thank you. Any other follow-ups on this question? All right, Mr. Silk.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Beth, for being here. We're on question number 3, which is what changes, if any, in governmental structure, organization, or powers would help the Human Resources Department address its most critical problems?
Thank you. I believe the structure works well as far as my experience goes. The only area that I can speak to is possibly in some collective bargaining agreements, there may have been instances where political consideration or influences certain language. While I wasn't involved in some of these meetings or negotiations where the language is added, I do believe that political pressure can play a role in union negotiations, especially considering Butte-Silver Bow has so many different agreements. I think our current chief executive made a smart choice by not sitting in on the negotiations during his re-election campaign, as it helped maintain a separation between the political process and contract discussions. Moving forward, I believe that it could be beneficial to have somebody from the chief executive's office, such as a city administrator or the chief of staff, involved in negotiations, somebody who isn't directly impacted by the election process, as this might provide a more neutral and focused approach to union negotiations. It also provides a level of continuity that I'm not as sure is always present in negotiations.
Follow-ups? Excellent, thank you. Mr. Dennehy.
Beth, one of the ideas that, in terms of organizational structure of the local government, that I have been involved in and talked about for several years when I was there, and it keeps coming up, is more of the risk management sort of safety officer sort of thing. Do you believe that where the safety officer and risk management is located in personnel, I guess human resources, sorry, I'm showing my age. Human resources is the best way to position that? Or would you say that that should be moved to, for example, Public Works, since most of our falls and safety issues happen in Public Works and the fire department too. At least it was. Have you heard about that before, and what's your opinion on that?
Thank you. I have not heard of that structure before, but I do believe that safety and risk management aligns really well with the Human Resources Department. I think a lot of what we do is confidential by nature, and when you get into looking at some of those risk aspects, there does have a confidentiality aspect built into that.
Mr. Denny, he made a new question, so we'll go to question 4 with you, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Worm, what advice would you give to the study commission in terms of conducting a comprehensive and impactful review of local government?
Thank you for the question. So I think you're on the right path by interviewing the different departments, and I know that you're also seeking advice or training from other local governments that might have different structures. So addition to that, I don't have any additional advice.
Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, Ms. Worm, thanks for showing up. What insufficiencies could be addressed through changes to the local government structure?
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure this is exactly insufficiencies or things that need to be changed, but I think it's important to keep in mind the need to maintain continuity despite potential leadership changes every 4 years. It's important to create systems that preserve institutional knowledge and ensure consistent operations. Additionally, cross-training is essential for staff to help them adapt to any changing roles or responsibilities. This may require additional resources to allow time for cross-training or system updates while maintaining operations. Overall, finding ways to ensure stability will help keep things running efficiently in the long run.
Mr. Dennehy?
Beth, could you define stable, what's stable in your mind? I mean, if there is a change, what do you think would benefit that stability?
Thank you. From my experience, it seems that at times when people leave, sometimes they take that knowledge with them. So finding ways to keep that knowledge within the organization.
Ms. Dolan?
I'm going to jump back a little bit. I've just been thinking about your response to a couple questions ago, and I wanted to ask you for an example. If you can give us one, of course you don't have to, but if when you're talking about political language and pressure, and that goes along a little bit with the stability, what does that look like, and what have you received to even say that? What pressures and things that you want to kind of veer away from?
Thank you for the question. I think that goes along with your point about different languages within contracts and trying to have them more, I don't want to say similar, but having more continuity with them.
Any other follow-ups? All right, I think we're on to you, Ms. Dolan.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So question number 6, what challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? You're so young, you can do that. Next 10 to 20 years. And does the current government structure position the city-county to meet those challenges effectively?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for saying I'm young. The biggest challenges I foresee specifically for the HR department are going to be workforce recruitment, retention, and development, as well as the need to adapt to new technologies and advancements. I do believe the current government structure will be able to allow to meet these challenges, but could potentially be enhanced by a level of continuity of a city administrator or something similar could provide.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Dennehy?
Yeah, so you mentioned city administrator a couple of times. Would you, just your opinion, are you saying that a city administrator or a city manager should be the form of government that we're looking at? Or are you, with your experience, do you like the political aspect of having the chief executive and the chief executive hiring a city administrator?
Thank you for the question. I have seen it work well with our current structure with the chief executive and then having that more elevated chief of staff, city administrator type position. I think it's been helpful.
Ms. Dolan?
Oh,
I thought you were signaling me. I do have a follow-up question. In terms of continuity, how would you work to resolve that? You've talked about it a little bit, but what are your solutions for that?
I think that is a hard thing to do. I'm not 100% sure I have a good solution, but I think you could look at some different technologies to kind of lead you in that direction.
And I think all of those are outside of the charter. I mean, we can't write that you should update the IT department every, sorry, I'm making jokes. Sarcasm is my superpower, so. All right. It is. Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Beth. This is the last question, and it is, what is the current rate of annual compensation for the Human Resource Department Director and members of the department's professional staff? And then the second part of that question is, are these rates of compensation fair?
Thank you for the question. So one thing that I found kind of interesting while I was looking into this a little bit more, I think my department might be the only one that doesn't have any union staff besides the elected official departments that are in staff of one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So all mine are professional staff in that capacity, I guess. So the HR director is at 98.5, the HR generalist is at 64.5, the HR technician is at 46.8, the safety and risk coordinator is at 71.7, the safety and health and ADA coordinator is at 73.8. And I'll also note that all wages are publicly available in the budget books, which are posted annually. Yes, I believe they are fair. I also believe that we're making strides to stand up a non-union pay structure, which has been needed.
Any follow-up questions? Mr. Silk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Worm, we received, I believe, the non-union wage study. I think Kim sent that to all of us. Can you tell us what communities were studied within that study, and if you believe those are good comparisons with Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you for the question. I do not have the list right in front of me, but I know it was the major cities in Montana, as well as some of the local industries in Montana. I believe it's a fair comparison. I also know that other local governments around the state has used the same service to get those wage studies. So I believe they have quite a bit of information.
Ms. Dolan.
I have a two-part question. The first part is the safety and risk management person, and then you have an ADA person. Are those two jobs similar, or do they have, I'm just trying to think of, in first glance, it would seem that just one person would be needed for that segment. Could you answer that? And I have a follow-up.
Yes, absolutely. The safety and risk does a lot more with liabilities, work comp claims. Safety and health does a lot of training, things in that vein. And then also the ADA coordinator with the health and safety does all of our compliance with that, and is also working through a transition plan for the ADA process.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up to that. Thank you for that clarification. And then I'm just curious, and again, it's not something that we can deal with, but it certainly affects Butte-Silver Bow. The number of employees that we have, it's been creeping up year after year after year. And what is your assessment of how many employees we need versus how many are hired? Can you give us a sense of that? Thanks.
Yes, thank you. So to that point, there are 3 reports that the Finance and Budget Office do each year to address any additional or removal of positions, and those reports are all online, so they're addressed in the annual compensation or comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year, the line item budget, and the performance budget. So it kind of addresses when positions are eliminated and when they're brought on. So that's addressed each year with those reports. I do think that they're appropriate.
Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Ms. Worm. I just wanted to know, as far as I know, there isn't a comprehensive employee evaluation, performance evaluation process. And it seems like if that was something that Butte-Silver Bow initiated, that would be in your department, and I would just like your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you for the question. That was discussed pretty thoroughly when we started doing the non-union salary survey. I definitely think it's something that we can look for in the future. I don't think that we're set up to do it quite yet. We do a probation evaluation with all employees, but really that's the only official evaluation that we do with employees at this time.
Mr. Thielen.
Quick question, how long is the probationary period?
It depends. Some are set by union contracts, so 6 months, 180 days. Non-union was recently moved to a year to align with the state.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. As far as I know, I assume the rest of the CBAs are like this, but I know in the clerks union, we are evaluated yearly. So I assume union employees do undergo a yearly evaluation. I know I sit down with my supervisor every year, did so at the archives, and I do so at the library.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I do not believe that that happens for all employees, but I think it's definitely something that probably should, but we're not quite there yet.
Ms. Casey, did you have a question? Just a light, okay. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one final question. With regard to the fact that you have to deal with 18 collective bargaining agreements, those agreements include wages, but also a lot of other things that the unions in particular, very particular things that they add to the contract. How is that perceived, if you can give kind of a analysis, if you would, for the non-union employees who are just getting wages? Do you work with them wage-wise to kind of balance that out? Because obviously, if you're getting a lot more into a union contract as opposed to just getting your salary and vacation days, is that something you have to struggle with in the HR department?
Thank you for the question. I wouldn't want to speak to how anybody else perceives it, only to what I've heard. I think at times it can be challenging. That's all. Has it been challenging for you? You know, having 18 contracts is challenging.
Mr. Silk?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Beth, just one final question from me. I see that in section 7.06, Human Resources Department, there's just A and B, and within our scope of work, this kind of gets down to the nuts and bolts of it. Is there anything that you would like to see changed or added or subtracted since you are the head of the department and have been there for quite a while? And if there's nothing, that's fine too as well, but I thought I'd ask.
Thank you for the question. No, I think it was very, very general, so there really wasn't a whole lot that I would change. I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think at times the ordinances might need to be looked at, because I think at times we're still referred to as the personnel department.
Okay. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On that note, 20 years ago, we changed it from Personnel Department to HR Department, just for the record.
Are there any other follow-up questions for Ms. Worm? Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation, and you obviously have a lot on your shoulders, and you are free or always welcome to come to any meeting that you might want to add something to or provide more information to us. And you're also always welcome to send any emails or things that, as you leave this meeting, you think, oh gosh, I forgot to mention this or that. I only have 5 employees. I meant to say I could use a couple more, and I need that IT thing. So, but thank you for your time. We very much appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, we have Mr. Hasler next. So as Kim's switching over, you have a presentation for us as well?
Madam Chair, I do not.
Okay. So we have our questions as you've kind of just seen what the process looks like. Of course, at any time you're willing to expand on those questions, and then we'll do our follow-ups. And as I stated to Ms. Worm, this is a time for conversation and for us to get to know how your department works, what your needs are, how your department is working for the citizenry of Butte. And it's not intended to be a grilling or you're not in court. So we hope this is a friendly conversation in which we can co-create solutions, good solutions for Butte if needed in the charter.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, so do you want to start us off again, Ms. McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for coming, Mr. Hassler. So the first question is, what are the specific responsibilities and duties of the Butte-Silver Bow Reclamation and Environmental Services Director?
Madam Chair, members of the Study Commission, that's a pretty broad question. I'll start off, I think the biggest thing is digesting and disseminating technical information to the local government, including the chief executive and the council of commissioners, along with the members of our general public as well. I think that's probably the number one goal, at least I put for myself, is being able to disseminate that technical information in a little bit of a format that's easier to understand, but still accurate and correct. Big part of that is reviewing remedial design documents and legal documents associated with the Superfund process to make sure that they are, what's the word I'd like to use? I don't want to say in compliance, but probably compliance is the best with the overarching orders or consent decrees that are in place for the various operable units in our community. By doing that, we have 4 operable units that we kind of have some involvement in, but only one that we are named as a responsible party, and that is the Butte Priority Soils Operable Unit. But we also oversee activities and review documents for the West Side Soils Operable Unit that's in its infancy stage. Same with the Butte Mine Flooding Operable Unit, and we also are on the fringe of involvement with the Streamside Tailings Operable Unit. So there's a lot of technical information floating around our community that we are kind of the hub to access that material, and also, like I said, try to disseminate that down and water it down to where it's digestible. I also have to do all of the budget development, which is numerous. The vast majority of our budgets are covered under what's known as the allocation agreement between Atlantic Richfield and Butte-Silver Bow. So the vast majority of all costs are associated with the Department of Reclamation and Environmental Services are covered from funding outside of the general fund. The vast majority underneath the agreement that I just mentioned, but there are a couple fringe grants associated with the other operable units and some restoration work that we do here in town, which would be the Pit Watch grant, and also our tree planting and re-veg activities that we do on reclaimed areas throughout the Butte Hill. So daily activities are making sure that the various programs within the department are accomplishing what they're supposed to be accomplishing. The big one is the Residential Metals Abatement Program. For those that aren't familiar, that program addresses contamination from past mining history in residential settings. So it is mainly, the goal is to remove contaminated soils and any contaminated dusts, but the program also has a multi-pathway approach where we can address other sources of contamination that may not be related to the past mining activities to ensure the health and safety of the children of our community. This also involves the oversight of the medical monitoring aspect, where we do routine blood testing. It's offered to mainly the sensitive population, which is 6 years and younger, but others can also access this, and then we use that data to try to trend where problems may be or more work needs to be done, and to see if the efficacy of Superfund is actually there. If it's working, it'll let us know if we can kind of see that trend over time. We also do the oversight and maintenance of all the reclaimed areas. That the work was actually conducted by Atlantic Richfield underneath the oversight of the Environmental Protection Agency, but our job is to make sure what they built stays effective and operates the way it's supposed to and efficiently, and again, protects our community. This also includes several stormwater facilities throughout the Butte Hill that are kind of intermingled with the municipal system, but our crews take care of those to lessen the burden, if you will, for the Metro Sewer Division. So we have anything from small ditches that are conveying stormwater to hydrodynamic devices and catch basins all over the hill, plus more to come through the consent decree process as further projects are implemented going forward. So the big part of it is attending a lot of meetings. Unfortunately, Superfund is drowned with meetings routinely, all day, every day, and manage the activities of 21 full-time staff members, 10 of which are professional. Eight of those 10 are directly within the Department of Reclamation, but we also have an environmental health nurse that does the medical monitoring aspect, who is located at the health department, and a GIS specialist that's located within the GIS program here at the courthouse. And then the additional 8 of those, we have 3 operators and 8 laborers on top of that as well. We help fund some various positions throughout the county to the tune of about 2 more FTEs, but their daily activities aren't overseen by our department.
Excellent. Other follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric, for coming, or Mr. Hassler, sorry. Just from that list that you just gave about your employees, would you like, we've been talking about the structure of government, and would you like all of those under I know they're under your purview, but they're kind of all over the place. Is that effective, or would you like something changed in that regard to consolidate and have them under your direct purview, or does it work well the way it's structured now? Just curious.
Ms. Dolan, thanks for the question. I think it works well the way it is. I mean, there's going to be times where they're kind of pulled in 2 directions, and I somewhat feel bad for the staff of answering to 2 masters, if you will. That kind of happens, but for the most part it works, and it's only 2 of the 21 that are really housed with somebody else. The environmental health nurse, I think, is very fitting at the health department because that's kind of the bailiwick of the health department. And then the GIS specialist, it is beneficial for him to be located, or her, within that department. It's currently vacant, so that they have the support and resources of the others within the department as well. So, I mean, outside of what they may perceive is an inefficiency or having to answer to 2 masters, I think it actually works well structure-wise.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric. Boy, have things changed since 20 years ago when I was on the last study commission. I just want to read the only part that's in the charter, and it's under Powers and Duties of the Chief, Section 4.02. It says, to be accountable for coordinating all Superfund activities, monitoring the funds, and shall interface with a volunteer citizens advisory board. I mean, that is about as bare bones as it gets. And I'm just thinking, with something that has developed and has become a huge part of our government, if we shouldn't, I mean, I just want your opinion on this, but we are going through the charter from page 1 to 17. So I don't know how you'd like to possibly comment on that as being part of the charter, maybe defining some of your responsibilities in a little more detail.
Ms. Shaw, members of the study commission, I could see value in adding a little bit more beef to that, if you will. Superfund is going to be here for a long time. It's going to be here in the forever. I think that's one misconception within the community, is that once the projects are implemented, Superfund's not over. So I think having something memorialized within the charter so that the next generation knows what the rules and responsibilities are, and the things that they have to do going forward are there, and you're not stuck completely relying on institutional knowledge within the department or historic documentation.
Ms. Shaw.
Follow up. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I mean, it might be something that you could just draft something, in minor detail or whatever, that we might want to take a look at to add to the charter. We wouldn't certainly, and our county attorney, of course, would be involved in that as well, but I'm just throwing that out there to you since you seem to like the idea. Okay.
Thank you for the suggestion.
You bet.
Mr. Denny.
Madam Chair, Eric, thanks for coming. A lot of the things that you have done was a long time ago when we first hired you as a environmental health specialist, and we're doing all the heavy lifting and all the running around at the health department. I was very proud to hire you, and Karen, probably my best hires that I've ever done. But I think Cindy has the right information or on the right track of including that in the charter. That makes it a little bit more specific. It is general, and there's a lot of leeway in that language. I mean, responsible for all the environmental information and responsibilities in the community. I think it would go a long way if you and the chief executive and your colleagues get together and come up with an idea that is specific so people know your responsibility. And as you said, you're not going to be here forever. And then the more I see gray around your hair, it could be next week. But it would be a very big, I think, heavy lift to put that in the charter, I think, so we can memorialize that for the future. Having that fairly broad detail also provides a lot of pressure on your position. Okay, it's so broad that I think I'm in the right area, but I might not be. But I think we should try to maybe fit that into what actually you want to say and be more specific in the charter.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. And I think one value to that was throughout the history of Superfund in Butte, until the last 5 years, there was not even a Superfund department. I mean, we were kind of housed over multiple departments, if you will, and the continuity going forward, I think, is going to be the most valuable aspect, and not, I mean, Dan is very well familiar with it. The Superfund's approach early on was the human health component was outside, it was housed in the health department. The environmental component was at the planning department, and really the two never met in the middle, where I think there's efficiencies there going forward, and having something in the charter that states there will be a department that essentially deals with the environmental issues that Butte will have in the forever is vital. So thank you.
Mr. Steppen.
Mr. Hassler, thank you for that. I'm assuming that if you were to be replaced, the job description posting would be a lot more specific than what's written in the charter right now. So a suggestion might be to take that approach, that if we were replacing this position, what would that job description look like? And maybe that will help guide the language for the charter going forward.
Mr. Steppen and members of the study commission, we went that route with the development of the Department of Reclamation and developed very specific job descriptions there, because there wasn't any before. I mean, the job just didn't exist. So they were created at that point in time, and if this commission would like to see those job descriptions, I'll gladly forward them to the group. So, and they'd be for the upper management group, for lack of a better way to describe them. So.
For the good of the order, I would like to note for the record, too, that Ripple, the organization that I am the executive director of, does have a contract with Butte-Silver to provide the assessments to the Butte Reclamation Evaluation Survey every year, and we also have a contract for Pit Watch every year. Also, Pit Watch comes out of another department, but I want you to know that that's my background and where I'm coming from when I speak regarding these questions or this suggestion. Having been part of the Breeze evaluations from, I think, the very first ones that were conducted through to present day, the professionalism that your department has brought to those evaluations, along with Ms. Julia Crane's consolidation into using tablets and the GIS system and taking things out of paper and pencil into being an electronic version, has been phenomenal in my experience. And I agree with you that having a department designed and spoken to in the charter is important, because as you said, this is a legacy that is going to go beyond our lifetimes and definitely forward to the next 10 years when the next study commission would be seated. So I think having it spelled out in our charter is critically important. One of the things I'm wondering about, Mr. Hassler, is your understanding of this piece of the charter that says the chief executive shall, number 2, as Ms. Shaw said, be accountable for coordinating all Superfund activities, monitoring the funds, and shall interface with the Volunteer Citizens Advisory Board. And I know there's many boards, so what is the Citizens Advisory Board that you think is being referred to in the charter?
Madam Chair, I believe that would be referencing CTEC, the Citizens Technical Environmental Committee. The chief executive has direct appointees on that.
Okay, so there's the direct appointees to CTEC, and then we have SARTA.
Yeah, that's another one that is heavily used, is the Superfund Advisory and Redevelopment Trust Authority. So we meet with them on a monthly basis, kind of going through the various projects that they are implementing, but also the funding that scenarios associated with SARTA and the ongoing remedial activities, so that they can provide guidance and advisement to the department and the chief executive moving forward.
Okay, and so do you think that it's sufficient with regards to the communication between these groups, the chief executive and the council of commissioners? You mentioned that that's a big part of your job. How do you see the citizens advisory boards helping out?
Madam Chair, I think where those advisory, SARTA definitely is more local government oriented. CTEC would be more with the regulators, being the EPA and the DEQ. I do feel that the department and the agencies, all stakeholders within Superfund, could do a better job informing the Council of Commissioners. I think that has been lacking over the last couple years, but I'd also give ourselves a little bit of cover with that. It's hard to go before council with not knowing what council wants to hear. So if council would provide, some general talking points and topics, that would be valuable, instead of us having to do guesswork, if you will, as to what information they would like to have presented to them at any given time.
So in regards to charter language, it's sufficient to say that there's a citizen council. You wouldn't think that there needs to be changes or tweaks to that particular language?
I think that is more fitting for the chief executive, whoever that is in the seat at that given time, what they are most comfortable with. I, as a director, am very comfortable working with CTEC and SARTA, but they are advisory boards to the chief executive. They're not advisory boards to me as a director.
So I guess what I'm asking is, would you put language in that said SARTA and CTEC, or would you leave that out given longevity of like 30 years?
Madam Chair, I'd provide the flexibility just due to the long-term nature of Superfund in our community.
Thank you for the clarification. Any follow-ups on our question 2 or 1? Was that 1? Yes, Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question for Eric, but I just have a comment. In regard to what you were just talking about, SARTA didn't exist when this charter was rewritten, and so I think the flexibility needs to be there. I think it needs to be somewhat general, because we don't know what the next 10, 20 years or the next time they review the study commission. So the more specific you get, the harder it is, in my opinion, for local government to do what they need to be done. So I think leaving it more general, it would have taken a charter to change to bring on the SARTA board at that time. So I think if we can remain somewhat general, I think it might be good to put a department, but I think it should be general, because you do have job descriptions, you have ordinances and policies and all of that go with a department. So not every department's named in the charter specifically. So that would be my thought, is to stay a little bit more general so that you don't hamstring your operations.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And the reason I didn't mention SARTA right away is because of that. SARTA didn't exist at that time, and I was unsure what their true role was. I knew what they were in place for, but I didn't know if it was governed by the charter. That is why they came into existence. So.
Excellent. Thank you all for the comments. Any other additional comments? Okay. I think we're on to question 2.
All right. Wow, we're just
Oh,
rolling
wait,
along,
sorry,
aren't we?
we're not. Go back, Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want your opinion, and I agree with Lori about keeping that generality for the flexibility, but I'm curious your opinion on the direct appointees piece of it for CTEC and SARTA. In your opinion, has that worked well, or do you think that they should be formed outside of appointment to give you objective advice? Not to say that appointees don't give you objective advice, but what is your thoughts on that? Thanks.
Ms. Dolan, I really don't have a lot of thoughts on that. I'd have to chew on it a little more than we're going to have right now, except for I do understand the appointment aspect, giving the chief executive a level of comfort with who they're working with. They're just the familiarity aspect of it. I didn't contemplate the other rationale that you provided. So, but I think it's worked to date, and it does give them, at least they're familiar. So.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, Eric, question 2, we're just rolling right along here. What are the most critical problems presently confronting the Reclamation and Environmental Services Department, if any?
Madam Chair, members of the Study Commission, I think you guys have probably heard this a lot, and I'd say that the main one is continuity. Not just at the local government, it's also at the federal government, and I know that's beyond all of our control, but it is very difficult to implement the projects, the programs, and everything associated with Superfund when you have administrative changes every 4 years. And like I said, it's not just at the local level, so I don't know how pertinent it is to this group, but that change, even at the chief executive, it's a difficult lift. You have a pretty big learning curve to try to implement in a very short period of time when you're talking about Superfund being in our community for 40 years to this extent. So trying to bring somebody up to speed that may only be in a seat for 4 years at a time, and especially at the regulator level of the EPA, is very difficult to bring projects and agreements to fruition and finality. Another one that I'd touch again is beyond the local government, but the Environmental Protection Agency released a new proposed plan in regards to a lead policy a month before the general election. And just the uncertainty in and around that, and the potential for the speculation out of the community, I think, is unfortunate. It is a proposed plan. It is not a final plan. And I think they have set the expectations up underneath one administration that may not be met by another. So.
Follow-up questions. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you. And again, I know this particular question is not directly affected with the charter, but I would like your opinion on it. And that has to do with transparency and your ability to be as transparent as you can with the constraints you're under, but acknowledging the fact that that's a big issue in Butte. I'd like you to speak to that if you could. Thank you.
Ms. Dolan, members of the Study Commission, I feel that transparency is a must. I do feel that there are certain aspects when you're underneath confidentiality orders and dealing with private entities that it's infeasible and an impossibility. And I think understanding from the community would go a long ways that way. I mean, there's just certain things that we are bound by. I know the confidentiality orders, everybody seems to think it went away with the consent decree, but there is aspects of Superfund and Butte that were not covered by the consent decree, and the gag order remains in place over those areas that weren't covered by a consent decree. So you've got dueling messages, if you will, coming out, but I don't know how to control that at this point either, other than as simply as I stated, things that aren't covered by the consent decree are still being negotiated, and that was the terms of the gag order that the judge put in place, was there had to come to finality with the consent decree, and there's items here in Butte that have not been taken that far. They haven't went down the regulatory route of a consent decree at this time. But I feel that full transparency within the confines of the law is vital. The public needs to be as informed as you possibly can make them and as accurately informed as you can.
Mr. Hassler, to that end, you're speaking of these complicated legal questions and navigating EPA and DEQ and then our local government on top of that. And you're not a lawyer. And we have a county attorney who's extremely busy. Do you feel that you have adequate legal representation or legal advice to navigate this?
Madam Chair, at this point in time, I would say it's lacking, but I don't think it's due to the educations associated with those in place. They're new. I mean, we had turnover. We had a lawyer on staff for Superfund that had spent 22 years working on it. And it kind of goes to my previous comment, even with the administrations, that turnover is difficult. You lose the historic and institutional knowledge that they've gained throughout their careers, and that is lacking at this point in time. So, and I do feel that there is needs at specific times to bring in outside counsel to help take the workload off of the county attorneys. Superfund, I wouldn't want to say is secondary, but they have other obligations to meet as well. That when you get into the very critical issues, we should be considering third-party legal counsel.
So we used to have a staff attorney that was an environmental lawyer. Is that correct? Is that what I heard you say?
I could not speak to her educational background, but she was an attorney and she was with the Superfund program and going to every meeting hand lockstep with us for 22 years.
Okay, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
So.
We also went, just for education, so we also went and hired an attorney from San Francisco when we were doing some negotiations.
That is correct.
And so we did have some outside attorneys, one outside attorney, so whether or not that was effective or not, that's another matter.
And I was going to go there as the example, as there's times when you have to, but we have in the past, we have utilized third-party legal counsel, and we have every intentions of doing that again going forward.
Excellent, thank you. All right, any follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to the point of outside counsel, would you be in agreement that, and again, your opinion, I think there was a little consternation that it was representing the executive branch versus the legislative branch, being the chief executive versus the Council of Commissioners. Would you be in favor of having counsel that represents Butte? I don't necessarily think that might have been the case last time. I don't want to speak out of order, but as a former commissioner, that county commissioner, that's an issue that's been raised. So what are your thoughts on that?
I was pretty fledgling in the Superfund activities at that point in time when we were using the third-party counsel, but I felt that he was representing Butte as a whole. He wasn't just representing the executive branch or the legislative branch. So I don't know how you separate the two when you're asking legal advice and guidance through the Superfund process. It's for both. It's not siloed to the executive or the legislative branch. The chief executive has to have concurrence with the council to move forward, so you're both receiving the same information in real time.
Okay. Mr. Silk, I think we're ready for number 3.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hassler. Number 3, what changes, if any, in governmental structure, organization, or powers would help the Reclamation and Environmental Service Department address its most critical problems?
Mr. Silk, members of the Study Commission, again, I'll go to continuity. I think the biggest issue that we see is, like I had spoke to earlier, that learning curve associated with the new chief executive coming in. I'm not saying move from the chief executive format, but maybe the implementation of a city manager that's not tied to the political aspect of an elected official. A city manager that's not, he's hired or she's hired, not elected, so that you have that continuity and you can put some stipulations and requirements on that position that kind of make sure that they can fulfill the obligations of making long-term decisions for the community going forward. It's difficult, I think, and I'm not just talking with my department, I'm talking from almost 27 years of experience here. It's hard to implement long-term projects when you have a potential change in priority and philosophies as frequently as every 4 years. So kind of getting ahead to the next question, I think, but I mean, I would turn to examples of, look at the various master plans that have been developed throughout history in Butte-Silver Bow and the inability to implement them, and that is usually due to that change in priorities and change in philosophies that come with an elected official. There's a reason why they don't get a second term and a reason why somebody new gets the seat. So.
Follow-up?
Thank you. So what does that flow chart look like then? If you're saying a city manager and a chief executive, what does that flow chart look like? If chief executive on top answers to, I mean, I don't want to answer for you, so you tell me what you're thinking when you said that.
Ms. Dolan, members of the study commission, this is my thoughts, this is my opinions, but I think it is not so much the chief executive format, but maybe more of a mayor format, where the long-term critical decisions are somebody that's going to be in that seat when those decisions come to fruition, when projects are coming to fruition, so that you have that continuity moving forward. So.
Mr. Dennehy?
So Eric, we have been listening to a couple of forums, and so I think maybe yours is a hybrid, but explain it to us. There's the current forum, the chief executive that's elected, and there is always that precaution that every 4 years, every 8 years, that person, he or she can be elected or re-elected or not elected. And then you have the idea of a city manager, which is not elected. It is hired by the council of commissioners on usually a 3-year contract. I don't know where that gets you anywhere if that person is not fulfilling the duties and responsibilities according to the chief or according to the council of commissioners. But that continuity, as you spoke, still could be lacking. So are you more of a total different professional manager that would do Superfund and have that continuity, or are you in more the favor of an elected chief executive or a appointed city manager? And I'd be I'm going to ask this question to everyone that comes here, but because that seems to be one of the major issues. So I'll be glad to. I'm excited to hear your opinion.
Mr. Dennehy, members of the study commission, I feel that if you had the city manager format that is, say, appointed by a chief executive, they're still hinged to the political aspect in the election. That doesn't allow for the continuity. So I'm talking a city manager that is hired, vetted, has very distinct job requirements and experience, that they essentially would act in the form of a chief executive, but they are not tied to the election and they can be there for an extended period of time. Kind of goes to the evaluations earlier. You may want to have a rigorous evaluation of this particular position to ensure that it is meeting the goals and objectives of the community going forward. But again, it's taking that political pressure off of the ability to make some of those long-term critical decisions and implement some of the projects. And I'm not talking just within Superfund. I go back to some of the master plans that have been on the shelves for decades, and we're not able to implement them. And I think a city manager could prioritize and move forward without wondering if he or she will be able to pull the votes in the next 4 years.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question for you. So with regard to that, and thank you for the explanation about the city manager, what are your opinions, and again, your opinion, about 12 commissioners part-time and your access and their knowledge base versus maybe something smaller amount full-time? What would you prefer, or do you have a preference? Or do you think the status quo is fine with the number of commissioners?
Ms. Stolen, members of the study commission, I'm a firm believer that the council should be smaller and it should be full-time employees. I'll speak directly with what our department sees is we deal with large technical documents, and expecting somebody to be able to work through that type of information and make an informed decision in a part-time role when you have a full-time job on the side is daunting. So I would be a huge supporter in a smaller number of commissioners that are full-time employees so that they could dedicate the time that is necessary to be informed to make some of the critical decisions that they have to.
Okay, I think we've kind of danced around question number 4.
I think we're clear to 6.
So it was, what advice would you give the study commission? Is there anything else you would like to add to that question?
Madam Chair, I think keep doing exactly what you're doing. I think hearing from the staff, hearing from what I've gathered, you're visiting with other municipalities, just see what's working for others, listen to the staff on what's working and what's not working, and keep up the good fight.
Do you want to take 5?
Red, what inefficiencies could be addressed through changes to the local government structure?
I think a big one, and I'm not 100% sure that this isn't a state issue or if it's a local issue, but it's the project bidding and procurement process, I think, has not followed the economic climate that we're in today, and having to go through the processes that we do to make what could almost be determined as some minor purchases at this point is a little overbearing and time consuming, but I'm not sure where that authority lies, if it's at the state or if it's at the state. So really, again, it would be kind of going to the learning curves, I mean, associated with the elected officials, mainly the chief executives coming in, and just continuity down going forward. So.
Excellent. Mr. Steppen.
Thank you, Mr. Hassler. Question number 6, and I think you've touched on some of this already, but if you have anything else to add, we'd love to hear. What challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? And does the current government structure position the city-county to meet those challenges effectively?
Mr. Steppen, members of the study commission, I think we have covered that pretty well. I think one that I haven't touched, and it's not really within my department, but it would be the ability to expand our municipal infrastructure. It kind of goes back to the master plan comments I've made, and implementing those long-term critical projects so that we can help promote growth within our community. It seems that with the inability to, or the change in priorities, you don't get to those projects, then it is somewhat, from the outside looking in, becomes a hindrance to the development moving forward. Where if we had the ability to implement the master plans associated with our metro operations, with our road operations, with I mean, I think we have a master plan for almost every department except for mine within Butte-Silver Bow, and I see that as the biggest challenge moving forward, is just be that long-term implementation and that long-term thinking going forward with the potential change in priorities every election season.
Okay, any follow-up questions? Mr. Thielen, you're up.
I don't know how I got number 7, but it really sucks, so.
You drew the short straw, Mr. Thielen.
What is the current rate of annual compensation for the Reclamation and Environmental Services Department Director, being you, and members of the department's professional staff, and are those rates of compensation fair?
I'll start with the fairness. I feel across the board that our compensation is fair. I think the wage study that was mentioned earlier was effective, it was comprehensive. I do have two positions, though, that I feel, the one did not exist during the evaluation, and I think it needs to be reevaluated, that it seems to be considerably lower than market value. And then the other one is one of the shared positions that we mentioned, and that's the GIS specialist, is it seems to be so far below market value that those particular positions are like a revolving door at this point in time. We've had vacancies more than we've had bodies in the seats, and those would be the only two. So now to, go ahead. What was the first one? The other one is a recently, so we had to adjust how we were doing our sampling efforts. So we brought on a sampling coordinator. It did not exist at the time of the studying, so, of the study. So I can't really speak to if it's fair or not, but it doesn't seem to match the compensation within the rest of the department for the roles and responsibilities of this particular position. So, and in regards to my salary, it's $109,600. Do you want the rest of the? Yes, it's fair. So I have everybody listed if you want it. I was a little unsure how detailed you wanted that, but I'll just run down it. We have two managers within the department. One oversees the operations. The operations manager is at $82,400. Then we have a data and outreach manager, which is a heavy lift. There's a lot of data that comes through Superfund. That person is also at $82,400. We have a construction supervisor that oversees the in-house attic abatement crews and the yard work that's conducted throughout our community. That person is at $74,200. We have a reporting and outreach specialist at $63,500. The sampling coordinator that we had just discussed is at $57,000. But the sampling tech that works with him is at $65,200. So that's an example of roles and responsibilities are a little skewed. With the environmental health nurse, which is programs that we work in tandem with Public Works. We have what's known as the Capital Improvements Program. Those budgets are determined by what projects that Mark, Director Geary, may have slated that fit the scopes for that. Capital Improvements is for sewer line work, which is stormwater though. We're just stormwater lines to get the water off the hill into a pipe as fast as you can to one of the catch basins at the bottom of the hill. The other one is for illicit and infiltration for actual sanitary sewer lines, and that program is implemented to prevent mine waste from getting to the treatment facility of Metro Sewer. So depending on what Mr. Neary has going on that year, those budgets vary from, I think this coming year we're speculating about $3.5 million.
Follow up?
I think you might have hit the microphone on your, so if you can just go ahead and repeat all of that again. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be reflected in the minutes.
Mr. Steffen.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just again, another opinion question for you. I heard recently that someone was concerned out in like Melrose and in the outer Butte-Silver Bow County having to pay stormwater fees when they don't have stormwater in these outlying areas of the Butte-Silver Bow County. Any opinion on that?
Ms. Dolan, members of the study commission, that's really outside of my jurisdiction, so I can't speak to what services they may or may not have, so I'd be uncomfortable. I really don't have an opinion. I don't feel that I have enough information to give an opinion.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric, Does your cruise still maintain some of the open space that has been created through reclamation? Or has that been turned over to Park and Recs?
Ms. Casey, members of the study commission, no, that is done with our in-house crews. They're known as the Breeze Crew. That's the evaluations that Madam Chair was speaking about that her program Ripple does for us, and then we implement the work with in-house crews across those sites. There are varying uses across those sites where some of the amenity type features that weren't associated with reclamation may be addressed by Parks and Rec, but for the required operations and maintenance of those sites is completely done in-house by our Breeze crews.
Any other follow-up questions? All right, excellent. Well, thank you for spending your time. And as stated earlier, if there's anything that you leave going, gosh, I wish I would have communicated this, by all means, please send us an email. You're free to come back to any meetings or be on our agenda again if you so choose. And then any ideas that you might have for how you'd like to change the language, of course, we'd like to hear that from you. We will be having more formal listening sessions too, and more if there is a charter change that you're looking for, we would likely invite you back to bring that language for us to consider.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and Ms. Burns from Community and Economic Development.
Do you guys need a break? Yes, actually. I brought a couple of handouts just in case they would be useful to you.
Excellent. Did you want to hand those out ahead of time?
Sure.
Mr. Thielen, would you like me to start with Ms. Casey so you don't have question 7? Okay, we'll keep going with the same order then. So Ms. McCormick, if you could lead us off, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Burns, for attending. Our first question is, what are the specific responsibilities and duties of the Butte-Silver Bow Community and Economic Development Director?
Thank you, Ms. McCormick, and Ms. McCormick worked in our office for a while, so she might have an idea that that's a large, it's a large umbrella of things that we do. So officially, we coordinate and administer all of the community and economic development activities for the city and county of Butte-Silver Bow. We work with both private and public sector partnerships to bring projects to fruition. Coordinating with all of the Butte-Silver Bow departments to get that done. So I know that's a very general answer, but we work on projects that work with economic development, affordable housing, master plans for the community that have been created for neighborhoods and areas like Uptown Butte. The Uptown Butte Master Plan was one of the plans that we worked to develop and are now implementing. We also have a housing strategic plan that we're working to implement. We work on neighborhood revitalization. The Greenway Trail is under our department's purview, historic preservation, and we have 5 economic development districts that we are currently administering that each have a board of directors that we are staffed to that work at targeting specific economic development activities within Butte-Silver Bow. Our office also oversees and administers multiple grants throughout the community right now, and those change all the time depending on the projects that we're working on. We conduct community needs assessment public hearings every year to hear from the community about projects that are most important to them in their neighborhoods or wherever they may find some need. We then use that information to apply for grants. We have 4 active community development block grants at this time. One is for the Phoenix Building, one is for the Butte Rescue Mission, one is for Aspen Place Apartments, and one is for the Finland Hotel. These are very large grants that work on specific activities within those areas. At any one time, we could be administering over 20 different grants from our office, depending on what those grants are. Planning grants, workforce development grants. So I've talked a lot. I just could keep going about all of the things that we do within Butte-Silver Bow. I did give you a handout. We try to put together annually a really fun little infographic, a way to put together what we do all year long. We update this every single year. It kind of gives an overview of what we do within our office.
Excellent. This is helpful. We can take it and study it. Are there questions, follow-up questions from the first question? Wow. Ms. Shaw, could you take question 2?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Karen. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Second question is, what are the most critical problems presently confronting the Community and Economic Development Department?
So I think that in terms of what you guys are studying and looking at, and I had 2 people go before me, so please don't think that I'm just stealing their answers. It's not plagiarism. But I just want you to, I have to echo the continuity of leadership is very difficult, as they've explained sometimes. When you have a change of administration, a change of leadership with who I directly report to every single day and work with, when that changes every 4 years sometimes, it can be very difficult. You are on a path, you're working on projects, you have priorities identified, and you're working to get those done because they are important to the community. And then there's a change of leadership. And I'm not saying that that's bad all the time, because sometimes it's good, but it's still a change. And so then you lose momentum, bringing people up to speed, getting everyone pulling in the same direction again. And so that can make the momentum stall. And so sometimes it takes a while to get things back on track and keep moving forward. And so that is some of the things that are difficult. So in terms of what we do every single day, that might not be totally related to the structure of government that you're studying through our charter. We need to coordinate our resources to address critical needs within our community. So like I talked about, when we identify what those are, you could probably tell me yourself what those are in our community, right? Affordable housing, workforce development, economic prosperity. All of those needs need resources to address them, to bring them forward, to move them forward. And those resources are at risk right now in lots of different ways. And so even at our state government, what the legislature does impacts how we're able to put our projects into fruition, bringing them to reality. And so that constant sort of, trying to figure out how you're going to pull those things together is critical for us. Right now, housing development in our community we're really focused on, plus other things, and those resources are scarce. And then, succession planning, I think is really important within our office. We have 9 people total with myself within our office, and we all have very big jobs and tasks to do. And so we're not, I'm going to quote someone that Matt and I were on a panel together last week, but we don't have a lot of depth, right? We're 1 deep on our bench. But we can fill in with each other when needed on an emergency basis, but we really don't have that succession behind us to understand, like, if I was gone for whatever reason, how is that going to be filled? And so that's something that I don't know if this body can impact, but I know it's something that I need to figure out how to plan for. and so that we can continue down these roads where we've made so many strides if there is a turnover of staff. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about, oh, no, sorry, I moved that one to number 5, so you'll have to wait. It's really exciting.
Follow-ups. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Karen, for being here. Appreciate it. Talking about leadership and the continuity therein, the same kind of question we asked Eric about, what are your opinions with regard to chief executive, city manager, and the number of commissioners? I know you do a lot of work every day, and having part-time commissioners that have to get up to speed maybe on a Wednesday night in like 6 seconds before a meeting starts. So what are your opinions? Sorry, that's my little editorial comment on that. But what are your opinions about the structure that we do have a sense of real essence in that regard? I'd like your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Dolan, Ms. Purdue-Dolan. I really echo what Eric already portrayed. So again, I'm not copying his answer, but I want to say that I do think that a city manager mayoral form of government would be really productive for our community. The political pressures that are felt by our chief executive are tough and deep. And sometimes the decisions that we are trying to make to move our projects forward and get things done for the good of our community can be influenced by those political pressures, whether we even mean it to happen or not, but it's a reality. And so to have, I loved Eric's answer about that sort of like, I think Dan asked him to sort of clarify that sort of like a hybrid kind of way that we would have a hired city manager that would have some sort of longevity in that role should they choose to have it and are performing to the expectations of the hiring body. That would really bring a level of security to the decisions we're making and how we're moving things forward in our community. And I would love to see that happen. Regarding the number of commissioners, yes, I do agree that we need to have fewer commissioners and full-time commissioners leading our community. And no disrespect to the commissioners that we do have. We have, folks that are dedicated, they've run for office, they've put themselves out there, they are serving our community in the best way that they can, but the way that we're structured doesn't allow them to be as effective as they could be if they were full-time people living and breathing and working in things every single day.
Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Karen, would you think the political pressure based on a duly elected chief executive from the community as a whole is more than having a city manager contracted with a certain amount of members from the Council of Commissioners who also might throw some political pressure to a contracted individual?
Thanks, Dan. Mr. Dennehy, I apologize. Yes, I think that there could be some political pressure put on a hired city manager under a contract basis. Just like you said, that could happen. But I do feel like an elected chief executive that's elected by the body of the citizenry is in a little bit different position in terms of the political pressure that can be put on them from all sorts of directions, right? And so I just feel like I think it's more intense.
Go ahead, Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Karen, for being here. I wanted to know how you felt about neighborhood councils or community councils. Your department probably works with those type of organizations the most. And if you could answer it both in the current form of government with 12 commissioners and representing their districts, or if we went to some kind of smaller commission member-based.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Casey. That's a really great question because I do feel like with our current makeup of 12 commissioners that have manageable districts to represent, I do feel like they do have that role as being that representative from that community. And so a community council could basically be created by that commissioner within that neighborhood to say, I'm going to hold listening sessions every, so often, come to my, this point of in the neighborhood, and let's work as a community council that way. And there could be more to it than that. But I think if we did go to smaller number of commissioners and more full-time, then neighborhood councils would definitely have a role in informing those commissioners about what's important to them in those neighborhoods. So I do think there can be a role for that. I think right now with our current form with 12 commissioners, I think adding a layer of neighborhood councils underneath that might be very duplicative and hard to manage. That's my opinion.
Follow-ups? Really quickly, and I apologize because it's going to take me a second to get my brain to get all the words out, because you mentioned we might need a break, and indeed we do. So when we're thinking about solving the problem of continuity, and the solution is let's bring on a city manager to solve that problem of continuity, it strikes me as a similar situation as what school boards and superintendents are, how they function. Now, Butte is an outlier in that we've had a superintendent that has been in the position for a long time. But on average, a superintendent turns every 3 years and is very much under a lot of political pressure, specifically from their school board. And so, could you explain to me how you're thinking about that city manager solving that problem of changeover constantly, and like they wouldn't be in a 3-year revolving door, or they would be able to provide the continuity that you can't get now?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is something that I don't know if Eric alluded to, but it's something that I picked up on in his answer to that question as well, is that I do think that to have it be effective, to have that city manager sort of role be effective, I think it would have to be on a much longer contract than 3 years. I do think it would need to be a hired position. I'm not sure how you do that. I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. I don't know exactly how it would work, but to have some level of security for that position, that they wouldn't necessarily be turned over every 3 years unless they were not performing. And so there still could be some there's always going to be political pressures on all of us that work, even as a hired department director, that I feel that sometimes as well. But I think that if there's a way to structure it where if someone is performing and meeting the measures that have been set in front of them, the goals and objectives that the commissioners have put together, and that has to be well thought out. So this is a lot. So if we did go, to hire a city manager, we'd have to really think about what are the goals and objectives that we want this person to lead us through, and are they meeting that measure? And evaluating that, whether it's on an annual evaluation, speaks again to evaluations. Is it an annual evaluation that's scored? Is there ways to do that? Are there listening sessions? It's a lot. It's a lot to think about. So yeah, it's a tough problem to solve. I agree with you. I mean, does that level of community or, that level of security or continuity with a hired position happen just because it's a 3-year contract? No. It doesn't, but does it have the potential to if they perform? Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Karen, I wanted to ask the same question I asked of Eric a little bit earlier with regard to transparency. You have a lot of very complicated things on your plate that you deal with, from TIFIDs and TEDs and just explaining what those are to people in the community, also the block grants, and that encompasses a whole nother animal. So in as far as transparency is concerned, do you have enough staff to work with that and to get those complicated issues out to the public, staffing wise? And also, do you think that in in conjunction with continuity, that maybe with a different structure of government that would help your transparency, having commissioners that are working full-time that you can deal with day to day and help with that outreach as well? Sorry, that's a long question.
Yeah, I'll try to do my best to answer that. So, so I think that in terms of the transparency question, all of our boards of directors that I mentioned are public boards, and so we do follow public meeting notifications, and we do post our agendas, and we post our minutes and things like that. I do think that we overall as a local government could do better in terms of how we notice our public meetings. We are following the requirements, don't get me wrong. We are following the requirements, but maybe we can do more than that. I mean, maybe we can utilize social media and electronic formats to a greater extent than we currently do to get the word out to those who don't necessarily read the newspaper or, look for an agenda online. Just a better communication out to the public that says, hey, we're doing this and this is what's happening. They are public meetings. We do have minutes. We do all of those things. I don't know for sure extra staff, if that would help necessarily in terms of the transparency. But then definitely working with a smaller group of people that are engaged and it's their job to be engaged in what we're doing might help, in my opinion.
All right. I think, again, we maybe have addressed question number 3. Did you have anything to add regarding changes in government structure or organization of powers?
I just wanted to mention that our department isn't specifically named in the charter either. I don't know if it should be. I think that would be a question to see what would be the benefit of that. I'm not really sure. So community and economic development for Butte-Silver Bow is, again, sort of a unique situation. In many other communities across the state, community and economic development or community development is part of the planning department. And they may have a separate economic development department. And I really do believe, maybe it's just because that's where I work, but I really do believe the way that what we have in Butte-Silver Bow and the way that we are set up with what our office does and what the planning and building code does, it works very, very well. We work extremely closely with each other. We include each other in each other's meetings constantly, as Lori knows. And so, we work really closely together, and I think that that structure works well. As far as being named in the charter as a separate thing, I'm not sure if that needs to happen. But maybe the language in there that refers to economic development in the charter is very sparse, and underneath the chief executive's duties. I think it's mentioned once.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with that, and I asked this question for myself and for maybe some folks that might be watching tonight or reading the minutes later, could you explain why the BLDC is not under your purview? I think a lot of people would go, wait a minute, what about the Butte Local Development Corporation, and why aren't they or not in your flow chart? So if you could explain that, that would be great.
Definitely. Thank you for that question. So the Butte Local Development Corporation is a private nonprofit. They are not a governmental entity. They are what you'd call an economic development organization. And most cities have a separate standing economic development organization that works very closely with the local government. They're called an EDO. The EDO has a role in economic development for the community, and they work very closely with the local government. So there are private nonprofit arm. We are partners in many conversations, but they can perform things that we can't as a local government, and they can take on roles like signing NDAs. A lot of times when you're working with large industry that's looking at your community, we will be in the room and talking with them, but there are certain times when we have to leave as local government representatives, but because we are not allowed to sign an NDA necessarily, and the Butte Local Development Corporation is, and they can take on that role and move those things forward.
Excellent. Any other follow-ups to the follow-up of the follow-up? Mr. Silk, could you take question 4, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Karen, for being here tonight. Question number 4 is, what advice would you give the study commission in terms of conducting a comprehensive and impactful review of local government?
I feel like you're doing an excellent job. By having staff come and talk to you, I would encourage you to reach out to staff directly, beyond directors even. Obviously, if you have questions about how something is working or why it's working a certain way, please go directly to the source to find out the answers. Because I think that's really, really important. I see some of the things that sometimes happen when certain topics come up. I would just encourage you to go directly to that source and even further and follow it all the way down till you get your answers.
Thank you. Mr. Steppen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Burns, thank you for that. Question that I have with respect to how we might do a better job. You talked about the amount of public noticing that you have to do, and things like these publications are intended to provide the public with as much information as possible. So on the topic of advice, we're working as a commission to try and be more accessible to the public and bring the conversation to the public. What advice would you have to us on how we can better do that, aside from the necessary public notices?
Yes, thank you for that question. I would definitely encourage you to use all resources you have available to you. Even if you were to, I'm not sure you guys have a budget, but if you did, man, you should spend it on reaching out to the public and getting some really fun sort of, like here's your study commission at work for you. Here's where we are in the process. I'm envisioning almost like a cycle, right? Here's where we are in the process. We're gathering this information, and then we're going to disseminate that information. We're going to figure out we come up with some recommendations. We're going to push those out to the public and see what our reaction is back. Maybe there's even surveys you could do. The last survey that we did for the Uptown Master Plan, we had over 250 responses. That's huge. I mean, it's a big deal. So I think that the more you push it out there to say how important this is, and getting it out in that way to get it to all members of the public. I know, right now I go on Party Line every couple of months, and that's great, and I'm reaching a certain demographic. But when we push stuff out through social media and those kinds of posts and see how many people are clicking on those and reading those, that's a different demographic. So I think it's just important to do that, and that would be my advice.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions? Okay, I think you're up, Mr. Dennehy.
It's scary when Karen says she's taking advice from Eric. It's just knowing both of them. Oh, geez. Anyhow.
Hey, you hired us both.
What inefficiencies could be addressed through changes of the local government structure, Karen?
So I think we kind of talked about that a lot. I don't think you need me to reiterate the structure kind of thing, but I don't know if this is anything that we can do through the charter, but there are some issues with timeliness and schedules in terms of how our processes work with Butte-Silver Bow. And one of those things are bid openings. We are the only local government that I am aware of that requires that bid openings be held at the Council of Commissioners meeting. It's not required by state law. It's not required even by our local laws. And I do feel like it's an inefficient use of our 12 commissioners' time. It's an inefficient use of our department heads' time to have a public bid opening at a council meeting. Other communities schedule these public bid openings at a date, time certain, in a public format where they are opened publicly and read, and anyone who's interested in knowing what happened with that bid can attend at that time. It doesn't have to be at a council meeting where you're jam-packed with a lot of business to conduct and a lot of people being paid to be there. And so I feel like that's inefficient in terms of monetary and time value for Butte-Silver Bow. So if you've ever been to a council meeting when there's 3 bid openings and you can't find the bid bond and you don't know if it's there, and you're flipping through things, and and the person who's trying to do this is getting flustered, and the council's getting frustrated, and it's hot out. It's tough. So I would really recommend. Those are things that we can just change through policy. I don't think it really applies to the structure of the government, but it's something that we should think about possibly. And then also just. Butte-Silver Bow, our resolutions pass through our Council of Commissioners after 3 readings. In many other communities, they pass on 1 reading, depending on the nature of the resolution or whether it should be required to go through 3 weeks. It's just something to think about. And I do agree with certain topics, that level of transparency, I'll use that word again, that 3 weeks allows for the public to know what's happening is good. So I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. One example of that, just so you know what I'm talking about, is if we are selling a piece of property for economic development purposes, let's say out at Montana Connections, and we pass a recommendation through our Montana Connections board, which is public. That board makes a recommendation to sell that piece of property for economic development purposes. They negotiate a purchase and sale agreement. The purchase and sale agreement is then brought before the Council of Commissioners and placed on an agenda and is approved. After that purchase and sale agreement has been approved in 2 different public meetings, we then have to pass a resolution, which takes 3 weeks. So it's a little bit cumbersome for a developer to understand, okay, I went through, it's going to take me almost 6 weeks sometimes to get a transaction complete if everything runs perfectly. So that is a little hard. But I don't think that might not be in the charter.
Any follow-ups? Okay. Excellent. Mr. Steppen, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Burns, we're on 6, right? What challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? And does the current government structure position the city-county to meet those challenges effectively?
So not to, again, reiterate everything we've already talked about the structure and continuity of leadership and things like that. I do think that is a challenge, but I do think that we have a lot of master plans for infrastructure extensions, water line extensions, things like that would lend for more dense development within our community for housing. Our housing plan calls out adding 2,400 units of housing in the next 10 years to our community, which is that's a steep goal. But I really do think that we have the means, we have the capacity to add those housing units if we can extend our infrastructure to create denser development. We also are working very closely on the zoning code update with the current planning director that would allow for denser development. So that's a challenge that we're facing. Getting that zoning code put through will allow those first steps to happen. What I've learned with economic and community development, it is not a quick read. Things take time, and so 10 to 20 years isn't really that long. And so I think that's going to be a challenge, is just getting those things done. And I think the government structure could possibly help us in just that continuity of leadership and pushing those things through. I also see a definite increase in the use of electronic formats to inform the citizenry and the public of things that are happening. We need to streamline those processes and make sure that people have access to the information. That will help us make quicker decisions, and then just embrace those wholeheartedly.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with your comment about zoning and denser development, I think that's a very, could be a very controversial issue in Butte-Silver Bow. And I won't elaborate, but I'll just say that. Do you think that, and again, it doesn't really go to the structure of the charter, but I'd love your opinion on trying to get information out to the public. Do you feel sometimes that the meetings that you have and the public engagement that you have is almost an echo chamber? The same people arrive at the meetings, the same people are engaged, and how do we make that a little bigger to have more community input instead of being reactive to finally, when people finally realize what's happening, you're put on the back foot. So I'd like your opinion on that.
So I can only speak to some of the successes we've had recently with our housing plan and the community engagement we did with the housing plan, the meetings that we had and the formats that we used. We had great participation. We did individual stakeholder interviews. We did large public meetings. We did large virtual public meetings where people could attend virtually so they didn't even have to leave their house. And so the amount of engagement we had was pretty staggering in terms of the public weighing in. And I think it gave us a really good ability to make some really good decisions. I think it's important to get the information out as far and wide as possible because you don't want that echo chamber. You want different opinions, you want interesting opinions, you want different input, you know, because it does tend to be some of the same participants show up all the time because they are engaged. And that's important too. You can't dismiss their thoughts just because they show up at everything, right? I mean, good for them. They should show. I mean, but you just want to get more people to show up. And so, yeah, it's a tough thing, but I think the more that you push it out there, the more you're going to get.
Excellent. Any follow-ups from that? Mr. Thielen, it's you.
Madam Chair, Karen, I'm sorry, this is the dreaded number 7.
Oh.
So here we go. What is the current rate of annual compensation for the Community and Economic Development Department Director and members of the department's professional staff? And are these rates of compensation fair?
Thank you very much. I do believe that the rates are fair. I did engage with the salary and wage compensation study that just took place. I felt like it was very well done and thought out, and I believe that we should implement that as a local government across the board. We do need a wage scale that has been implemented and followed and updated. Beth knows how I feel about this, and I agree with her. So I do feel like they're fair. So I have 7 professional staff within our department, and we have 2 that are covered under the clerical collective bargaining unit. So myself as the director at $109,637 if you round up. We have an economic development coordinator position, and that is $83,548. A community development coordinator position, $86,442. Historic preservation officer at $67,487. We have an urban renewal agency financial project manager, that's at $65,130. Our grant writer is currently at $60,000, and our housing coordinator is at $55,000.
All right, any other questions? Ms. McCormick?
Wrong one. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Karen. I just, we talk about transparency and public involvement. And one of the things when we started, or the first thing that we did was have a meeting with the local government center, and they really emphasized the importance of having public comment, the opportunity for public comment on that is not a state requirement. that boards have the opportunity for public comment on anything on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, but I think it's a really important requirement because it allows the public to have an opportunity to comment and a reason to come to a meeting. And when you don't think you're going to be heard, you might not want to show up. So I'd like to know what you think about that.
I completely agree with it. I believe that public comment should be allowed at all public meetings, and I do agree with it. And it is something that we include on every single one of our agendas.
But I'm talking about at the beginning of the meeting, public comment on the agenda, and that's included in your...
We do allow for public comment on all of our board commission meetings. I think Ms. McCormick is referring to a lot of our urban renewal district meetings. We do have public comment, but is it the end of the agenda?
I guess I'm confused as why wouldn't they be considered the same as any other Butte-Silver Bow?
I don't have an answer to that question.
So you don't have an answer to why you wouldn't include public comment on the beginning of those meetings?
We include public comment on our agendas. It's just at the end of the meeting. That's just the structure of our agendas. But it's up to our board chair, I guess, to rearrange the agenda if they so choose to put the public comment at the beginning.
Okay.
Ms. McCormick, you were making a suggestion to Ms. Burns to revise that. Is that the idea?
I wasn't making, I just think public comment at any board meeting or any group meeting, any public meeting, having public comment at the beginning on anything on the agenda is a critical thing. And that's just what I think.
Thank you for the thoughts. Is there any other questions? Okay. Ms. Burns, thank you for your presentation and thank you for your ideas. And I think we do have, so you know, we do have budget and we do have plans for surveys. These documents that you provided are good role models in terms of how to talk about things that we're doing. And so we appreciate that feedback as well. And again, same as I said to your other two colleagues, if there's any questions or thoughts or ideas that come out as you leave here and you want to communicate with the commission, we have that email and you're welcome to do so. Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to ask Karen, who did you use to conduct your surveys?
Ms. Casey and everyone, so our consultants that we've hired for each of our individual plans conducted our surveys for us, or developed the surveys for us and pushed them out. I do know that we have used Butte Local Development Corporation in the past. They've been able to do that for us. There are some private marketing firms within Butte-Silver Bow that can actually do that as well. Mm-hmm.
Oh, one more question.
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you ballpark how much it costs? If just even a ballpark. Just curious.
I wish I could. I don't even want to say the wrong number, but I could definitely email you the group of what we've paid for that service. No problem. I can do that.
Thank you. I just because we have a certain amount of money and we want to make sure we cover all our bases. Thanks so much for that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Well stated, a certain amount. Folks, I could use a 5-minute recess. I have to get out of my chair. So if we could recess for 5 minutes, I need to stand up. So if we could please recess for 5 minutes and come back. Thank you, commissioners, for coming back to order and for the little break so I can feel my legs. We are up to correspondence of the study commission. If you can take that on first, Ms. Cohn.
I don't know if y'all have checked your email yet, but we did get an email that I forwarded to you all. I will print it out and attach it to the minutes, expressing their opinions. So I didn't print it out yet, though. But you all can read it. Hopefully everybody was able to access the information that I sent on the park. Did I send information on the parks? No. Just a little thumbnail? Huh? I don't know. It's in OneDrive. Okay. So I've sent information on the parks. Throughout this process, all of the towns tend to use, including ours, tend to use Civic Plus, which can be a little cumbersome to use. But ours is actually fairly transparent, and when I'm looking for something, about 60% of the time I can find it. In our neighbor town, I don't want to disparage them, but it is impossible to find stuff. So when you see a lack of information about Anaconda Deer Lodge, it's because I just plain cannot find where they've hidden it on the site or if they've put it on the site. And it could be the software that they're using. And I encourage you guys, go and look at the official sites, even beyond the ones that you've instructed me to do research on. They're really interesting. I added, last week, I added our timeline to our webpage. I added the schedule of our department head interviews to our webpage. And if you have any other ideas that need to be on our webpage specifically, please let me know, and I can add them on there. It's just a couple clicks of the button, and that is all I have.
I have something to add in this section. We did hear back from the Law Center. Ms. Cohn, I don't know if you saw that email. It came late today, but the MSU Law Center said that they could schedule either April 7th or the end of April. I asked if they could try for the end of April just to give community time to come and hear that session as well, since there's a lot of interest in the forms of government related to city manager. So as soon as they get back to us, we'll work to get them into the agenda. So we might have to do a little bit of moving and shenanigans. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kim, I was just curious. I wouldn't mind going to an Anaconda Deer Lodge Study Commission meeting, and I don't know if we know when they have theirs. So is that something you might know, or?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Shaw. It is actually easy to find on their website. Oh. That is one of the things that if you just Google Anaconda Deer Lodge official site, and I think they have like everything over on the left, and then they have the study commission on the right. So they are actually very easy to find. And if I think about it tonight or tomorrow, probably going to be tomorrow.
And follow up, maybe you could get the name and a phone number of the leader so I could give him a call and let him know if I was coming or something.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and any of the links in OneDrive will probably get you there as well. If I haven't already sent it, I will send it out.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, any other correspondence? All right, moving on to unfinished business. The public outreach discussion, I think we had the correction in our minutes that it's the third Wednesday of the month for Party Line, and Matt and Cindy, you guys will be going to that. I will confirm with Ron Davis, probably tomorrow actually, that we will be there on that Wednesday. And then the op-ed piece, it was 600 words is their allowed limit. So we're a little long on the 600 words, but I think we have several pieces we can chop in, or we can maybe ask for a story or some way to cover what we have written. How would we like to proceed with the op-ed, moving that forward?
Madam Chair, I think there's a couple ways we can go about it. The one that was drafted was I think sections 1 through 4 of like an 8-section op-ed that I originally outlined. We can look at chopping it down into smaller sections that maybe meet that 600-word criteria and do it over a series. Is a suggestion. I don't know, that's just a thought.
They also offer guest editorials, which I think can be a little bit longer. So maybe nope, there were 600 for the guest editorial.
There were 250 words, I think, if I read it right, and then 600 for the full.
Okay.
And that's with the Montana Standard. The Butte Weekly is
We can put in
limitless.
5 pages in the weekly. Do you want to take a crack at cutting down to 600?
I can certainly draft a 600 encompassing the topics that I did in the original and see what it looks like.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that work too.
You bet.
And then I thought Ms. Burns offered some excellent ideas. And regarding the social media and meeting people where they are, I did have a conversation tonight with County Attorney Enruth regarding the use of Facebook to publish and post our information about our meetings. And he said it's absolutely allowed and that the county does have a Facebook page and we can work with that county communications person to get things posted so that people know who's coming forward. I think especially these meetings that we're listening to, people might want to at least tune in on YouTube, if not come in person. He gave all the same cautions that we heard from the Law Center in terms of that there can be comments that come into the chat and whatnot on Facebook that could be harmful, but that the county it's a gray area, but they are allowed to remove things that are extremely obnoxious if needed. And I'm assuming that would not be the case. I think we can post what we're doing and where we're going to be and try to get people involved. And especially as we go to the surveys and getting people to try to engage in survey, I think would be, we need to use the social media. There's a great contingency that is not reading the newspaper or watching the news that we need to reach to. Yes, Mr. Steppen.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a thought. And I'm speaking for myself, not for the commission here, but I think that marketing is a bit of a blind spot that I have. And I feel like it might be worth it for us to get some quotes on what a comprehensive marketing plan would look like and if it fits within our budget. That would include print, that would include digital media, that would include social media, potentially, its own Facebook page type of thing, rather than us trying to take this one thing at a time. I know that my comfort level isn't high on the best way to do that. And so there are marketing consultants that we've worked with within the community, and I think people like Karen can provide us some great references. But I think it's worth looking at whether it fits within our existing budget and moving forward that direction.
Madam Chair, I agree with Matt. This is a specific point of people who are educated and know how to do a marketing plan. If we all put it in one group, maybe have a proposal, get some quotes and do it, that will take a lot of pressure off of us and to get it pushed out the door. If we really do want public involvement, and we do, I think a professional group should do it. And we have money. We haven't even spent money on pins yet, so I think we have that money.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a question to Dan and Matt. I totally agree with that, and having a professional not only give us advice, but actually take it on. Would you think that would be something that we could hire on for the length of our tenure here as a study commission for all the different points along the route that need outreach and up until the general election in November of 26, I would hope that someone would come in with a bid, hopefully that is doable, and also that in entire tenure, so we can rely on them, not just for the beginning, but through the whole course of our work here, because I think it's ultimately important to get folks to the ballot, to the polls in November of 26 to either approve or disapprove, and also talking about the other bucket of recommendations.
Perhaps one of the strategies too might be to look at what internal resources Butte-Silver Bow has, if any, to help us with this. I know we have social media comms people here. I don't know if we could pay part of their salary for some time and effort to this. I'm not sure what's available or feasible, but maybe that would be something we could choose as well as an outside contract. And then just to be clear, County Attorney Enru said to use Butte-Silver Bow's Facebook page. I don't know if we want to get in the business of creating our own Facebook page, but use theirs and push out with their usual media. They have a bunch of followers on that current page. We could ask that question from him in regards to a study commission Facebook page. Mr. Silk.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I believe that Butte-Silver Bow has a public information officer that I feel like might, as I hear this transparency question or term come up, and boy, I've been hearing it a lot lately with certain things. It might be a recommendation going forward to not only use them during the study commission, but also what is their true role other than just having the Butte-Silver Bow Facebook website? But is their role to only come in during an emergency? Because when we talk about a public information officer in my world, it's when bad things happen and it's reactive. And I guess I'm just curious what the role of the public information officer is, and if transparency is such an issue in Butte-Silver Bow, which it always has been, and I almost guarantee it's always going to be, but at least there's an effort put forth. We might just ask the question of what their role is and how they could help us, and then make a recommendation in the long term of maybe defining their job a little bit more specific on how to help the community just know what everything is what is happening in the community. Thank you.
Ms. Cohn?
So, thank you, Madam Chairman and Mr. Silk. I believe, if I'm right, Jason Parrish in the ID department is the public information officer. I'll have a little visit with him and see if he can help us out with any of these activities. I know he manages like the citywide, the Civic Plus site, but I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, and there's no assumption that they have time or willingness or ability or allowed, but we can ask the questions and see what's possible. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kim and Chad, for those thoughts. It is Jason Parrish, and he is our website guru. He's done everything you can imagine with the website as well for outreach and making it easily accessible and user-friendly. He's an awesome person to talk to about public information. Yeah, he is he's a PIO here in Butte. So the other thing is when I was going to ask Bob over here, he could tell us when we started, but we did hire a professional marketing person, and he did an awesome job, and it was well worth the money, and we were able to fit it really well into our budget. And then as to Ms. Purdue Dolan is, you give it to them, they run with it, and they make sure they do things on a regular basis. It's all coordinated chronologically, and they get a little more intense as you get closer to the actual election. Yeah, it's a great investment, so I highly recommend it.
Ms. McCormick, and then I'll take you, Mr. Steppen.
When I was a Butte-Silver Bow employee, at times I had events or things that I wanted help with and pushing out and advertising, and Jason helped me, and he was great. But I had to provide the content, and that's, I think, where the rubber meets the road. We have to still provide the context, and if you hire somebody that comes in and looks at your organization, you don't have, I don't know who wants to be the developer for the content. And so I think that would be worth hiring somebody to do that.
Madam Chair, thank you. And Mary, my comments are very similar to yours. I think that oftentimes we confuse public information with marketing, right? And so I think what we're talking about, or at least what I'm talking about, is someone where we can give the objectives and that they can give us the roadmap, and that would include things that we could provide the county's public information office to help facilitate and push that message out. And to answer your question, Cindy, I think that it can be whatever we want it to be. And I would suggest we start with a full comprehensive plan and find out what the cost of that is. And if it fits within our budget, great. And if it doesn't, we can talk about scaling it back to what does, or negotiating. But I think it would behoove us to help develop a marketing plan to reach as many constituents as possible.
Madam Chair, I agree with Matt and Mary. I think this is a marketing issue, not a information PIO sort of thing, and I think we pay them to get the message out. They take care of it. It's their baby. We are going to be overseeing their work product, but they know how to run with it. So that's my suggestion.
So it sounds like we need to develop an idea of what that plan is, and then we likely need to think about reaching out to how do we get the bid process going. Do we just put that? I'm asking you, Ms. Casey, because I know you understand this process well.
Madam Chair, I think that if we have some marketing firms here in Butte, we can reach out to them. As long as we're under the $80,000 threshold, we can just get the 3 quotes for what we want. And then I was also going to mention, just like when we have hired consultants before, that information can still be put on Butte-Silver Bow's website. But just like as Matt stated, you're having somebody develop it. Because I agree with Mary, every time we from the planning department put something out, we had to create it if our consultants didn't. And I think that's where we're all struggling to put that content together and the expertise needed. So I think that, or we can reach out to Karen if she's got some ideas. I'd be happy to reach out to Karen to see if she has some recommendations for that. And then I think we can just solicit them for, once we have kind of a roadmap of what we want.
That sounds excellent. I've used some within my organization as well, so I can add those to the list of folks, and we can just reach out. Sounds like that sounds easy enough. They can also give us a framework, right? It's going to cost this for this much, and for the Cadillac, it'll be more than your budget. But all right. Anything else on unfinished business related to public outreach? Mr. Silk.
I just want to make be put on the record. I totally agree with having someone else create that content and then using Mr. Parrish or whoever uses the Butte-Silver Bow website. But going forward in a recommendation to, if the PIO is not going to do it, do we need more PIOs to do something for the county? Because it's always a problem with transparency, always. So maybe just suggesting when IT comes up, because they are going to be swamped. Totally agree. But when we get to their department, I think we should, and we can't hire or give them more money or anything like that. But it should be, in my opinion, a large recommendation to increase that information gathering to be put out to the public, not only just for us, but just going forward with everything in Butte-Silver Bow. So,
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to your point, Chad, I totally agree. But as long as we make clear to the general public, we're all volunteers. So our budget, it's great to hire an expert in marketing. So there's always the situation where we seem to be paying 2 and 3 times. We have staff for Butte-Silver Bow, we'll have public information, then we'll hire consultants. So we have staff we're paying consultants, and maybe even another layer. But I agree, a lot of times with public information, it's on the the burden is on the department head, where in fact it could be a public information person, and then knowing that person is the conduit to those departments. And so that's something maybe we can chew on a little bit more when IT comes. But I think it's a very valid point, and a taxpayer point of view as well, of how well we are spending the taxpayers' money insofar as the local government and then the other folks that can augment what we're doing. But in this case, it's so relevant and needed, so thank you.
Yeah, excellent points, folks. And I think it was raised by each of our division directors today in regards to communication and transparency and coming into the electronic age. So definitely a point to make sure that we bring forward in our recommendations. Are we ready to move on to unfinished business? Okay. Or excuse me, new business. We were on unfinished business. So our new business, format of discussions with the Council of Commissioners. And Ms. McCormick, I think this was you who was bringing this issue, yes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I guess I always assumed that we would be speaking, or we would have, or at least afford each of the Council of Commissioners the opportunity to come before us and be interviewed, similar to what we are doing with department heads and elected officials. They're another group of elected officials. They're their own branch. You know, they're one of our 3 branches of government. And, you know, there's lots of talk out there about changing the composition of that body. And so to me, it seems pretty important that we hear from them. So, and we have no commissioners scheduled before us right now, and maybe 12 is a daunting number, and maybe that's another reason why we need to reduce them in number, so the next study commission doesn't have to spend 4 or 5 nights, and maybe, but I think it's important, and so I just think we need to talk about it a little bit and come up and, I mean, I don't think it's mandatory that each commissioner come and speak with us, but I think we should at least extend the invitation.
Excellent. Other follow-ups or ideas? Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, Mary, I agree. You could probably put the invitation out. If they come, great. If not, that's fine. We know where they stand.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, I had a week to think about when Mary brought it up, and I was trying to look at the efficiency of that, but the more I thought about it, I think it's absolutely essential that those council members who want to be heard, since we are talking about maybe keeping the districts the same or lowering or making them smaller, I think they should have the ability to come up and speak. And if not, if they don't want to speak, then they can provide a written format of our answers to our questions and get them on record and say what they think. So I agree with Mary. I think that we can have 3 or 4 of them per night, just them, and so it would be 3 weeks extension, I would imagine. So I would agree that we should listen to the Council of Commissioners if they feel like doing that.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Dan's point, I would just say maybe with the efficiency we had this evening and not intentional duplication, but the fact that we were asking them all pretty much the same questions, and we'll likely do that with commissioners, maybe even doing 6 and 6 with the format so they each have a chance to express their own individual opinions, because each district is very different. Like Dan Callahan is more rural versus Cindy's Tommy Walker, correct, in your position? So very varied list of obligations and concerns with the varied districts in our community.
Mr. Silk.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Should we, as the questions committee, come up with a couple different questions that are related for the commissioners instead of going through all 7 and half of them don't even apply. Today was a very efficient meeting where the department heads answered 3 or 4 questions in one question or some follow-up. So if they do come, and I think they should as well, it might be worth getting us together and coming up with maybe, I'm not even going to put a number on it, but probably less than 7 more pertinent questions if anyone wants to discuss that.
I would agree. I think that commissioners, in regards to the structure of the commission, how many, probably structure of government would have opinions about that. But, other than that, I'm not sure if we need all 7. So I think the subcommittee can probably take that on and bring something back. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. And so our direction would be to schedule those commissioners as you can. So, and I know we have this change that we might have coming up with the push-in of the MSU Law Center. Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, I think we'll be able to fit in the April thing easily without rearranging anything. We can put that under new business or wherever. My question would be, do you want me to filter in commissioners under new business or go into June and schedule them like I have the department heads?
Thoughts on that?
Madam Chair, I would move till June. They have 6 members on one Monday, 6 members on the other. So we have some leeway. I mean, we do have business up until that time, right? So our time frame will be fairly specific. So I think having maybe 2 sessions in June with the council, 6 and 6, would be appropriate.
Okay, so do I need a motion on this one? I don't think so. I think we're just directing Ms. Cohn. Mr. Thielen?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Dan, this question's basically kind of directed for you. You were talking about if we decrease the number of commissioners, we're going to have to make the districts larger, not smaller, right?
I think so, Ben. I would imagine we would have to consolidate a district to make them larger, depending on what that looks like. Yeah.
Ms. Cohn?
Or there's an at-large option as well. I mean, there's more than just having districts. You can elect 6 people or 8 people at large.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kim, that's a great idea, but I don't know. That means everybody, yeah, no, and I think the only problem with that is they're so different. Uptown Butte and then, Walkerville or, Ramsey. But, so I was going to suggest that maybe we just ask the chair, John Morgan, if at the end of every council meeting, he has a chance if there's anything on the, anything we care to talk about, and he might want to he could bring it up then to the council members and ask them who would be interested and to be on that, and he'll take a show of hands and write them down. I mean, that might be, I know it sounds too simple, but we did that a lot for people that want to be on boards or anything else that went on, that was involving the council members. So I don't know, it's just a thought.
It might speed up the process of scheduling. And then I think to Mr. Dennehy's point, offering the option to provide written comment should also be given to the commissioners so that they can just read it into the record or have it for our record and not have to appear. But those that would be willing to come and visit with us, that maybe we could ask them to do that. I think it's reasonable. And then if we don't get anywhere with that, we can try again in email. Okay, Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say to Cindy's point about how even having 12 commissioners, each one is very unique. And I would hope that they would come in person. I really don't want to have written comments because I like the fact that people can see it on YouTube and be here in person and say, and fight for your district and tell us what is good, bad, and different about your district. They should know it pretty well, even the newer ones. Yeah, we're going to give them a couple more months to get their feet under them, but I would think that they know the core issues for each district, and it's important for us to get that full picture, especially if we're thinking about consolidation. So anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I think that we're just trying to be as flexible to allow as much comment as possible, you know, given that these are also semi-volunteer folks that are working every Wednesday night for their long meetings too, so want to be conscious of their time as well. And so maybe the written comment, it gives them that option. I agree, it's not ideal. Coming to talk is better, but we'll see what we can do. Ms. Dolan?
And just a clarification, all commissioners are paid, they're not volunteers. So anyway, we're volunteers, but those commissioners aren't.
Yeah, I would still call it a semi-volunteer position. They're not paid a lot of money.
It's called a stipend.
I love our vocabulary and grammar discussions at these meetings. They're nice. All right. So, do you have direction, Ms. Cohn, from us? You know what we're doing?
I think so. If not, I'll send out some emails if I don't.
Excellent. Okay. Anything else on that issue for new business? Okay. Well, seeing none, we aren't having a public hearing tonight. Do we have any other scheduled matters? And yes, Miss. Or I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry. The peripheral vision on the left is like, I got it. How about public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission? All right, so our announcements, we will continue with our meetings every Monday at 5 p.m. except on our federal holidays. So go ahead.
I have an announcement too.
Okay.
Make sure your mics are off before I get over there. And we don't want to pick anything unnecessarily up. You couldn't hear it on YouTube, but you could read in the transcript some inappropriate comments. So turn your mics off because they're live until I get over there.
Other comments that were not part of the agenda, maybe. Okay, so I would take a motion to adjourn, please. So moved. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll see you next week.